Do you want to deal with rude people without losing your cool or compromising your values? Discover the ancient wisdom of Buddhism that can transform your interactions with difficult people. In this video, we'll explore powerful Buddhist teachings that can help you respond to rudeness with compassion, equanimity, and wisdom. Lesson 1. Ignore them. When someone is rude to us, our initial reaction might be to respond in kind, to defend ourselves, or to retaliate. However, the Buddhist teachings encourage us to pause, take a deep breath, and choose not to engage in the negativity. Ignoring rudeness is not about pretending it doesn't exist or suppressing our feelings. Instead, it's about choosing where to direct our attention and energy. When we respond to rudeness with more rudeness, we only fuel the fire of negativity. But when we choose to ignore it, we starve it of the oxygen it needs to burn. This is not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of strength and wisdom. The Buddha taught that the tongue, like a sharp knife, kills without drawing blood. Words can indeed be sharp and hurtful, but we have the power to choose how we respond to them. By ignoring rude words, we are choosing not to let them harm us. We are choosing peace over conflict, understanding over ignorance, and compassion over anger. Ignoring rudeness allows us to maintain our inner peace and equanimity. Equanimity is one of the four sublime states in Buddhism. It is the quality of being calm and composed, even in the face of challenging situations. When we ignore rudeness, we are practicing equanimity. We are choosing not to let external circumstances disturb our inner peace. However, ignoring rudeness does not mean we are condoning it. It simply means we are choosing not to engage with it at that moment. We can still address the issue later when we are calm and composed, and can respond in a more constructive and compassionate manner. Ignoring rudeness can also be seen as an act of compassion towards the person being rude. Often, people act rudely because they are suffering in some way. They may be dealing with stress, anger, fear, or other negative emotions. By choosing not to respond to their rudeness, we are not adding to their suffering. Instead, we are giving them space to calm down and reflect on their behavior. Buddha said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become." By ignoring rudeness, we are choosing not to let negative thoughts and emotions control us. We are choosing to cultivate positive thoughts and emotions instead. We are choosing to become more peaceful, compassionate, and wise. So, the next time you encounter rudeness, remember the teachings of Buddhism and choose to ignore it. Choose peace over conflict, understanding over ignorance, and compassion over anger. Lesson 2. Politely ask them to stop. The second lesson in handling rude people, as per Buddhist teachings, is to politely ask them to stop. This is a delicate process that requires mindfulness, patience, and a deep understanding of the Buddhist principle of right speech. Right speech, one of the Eightfold Paths to Enlightenment, encourages us to communicate in a manner that is kind, truthful, beneficial, and timely. When someone is being rude, our initial reaction might be to respond with anger or defensiveness. However, Buddhism teaches us to pause and reflect before we react. This pause allows us to calm our minds and choose our words wisely. As the Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." So, how do we politely ask someone to stop being rude? The key lies in our approach. We should strive to communicate our feelings and boundaries without blaming or criticizing the other person. This can be achieved by using I statements instead of you statements. For example, instead of saying, "You are being rude," we could say, "I feel uncomfortable when I am spoken to in this manner." This approach expresses our feelings without attacking the other person, making it more likely for them to listen and understand. Our tone should be calm and respectful. The Buddha taught, "Speak with a calm and gentle voice." A harsh voice can wound like a sword, but a soft voice can soothe and heal. By speaking calmly, we can diffuse the situation and create an atmosphere conducive to understanding and resolution. It's also important to listen. If the person is being rude because they are upset or frustrated, giving them an opportunity to express their feelings can help diffuse the situation. Listening with empathy and understanding, without interrupting or defending, can go a long way in resolving conflicts. As the Buddha said, if you truly listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart, you will hear the truth. However, asking someone to stop being rude does not mean we are responsible for changing their behavior. We can only control our own actions and reactions. If the person continues to be rude despite our polite request, it may be necessary to implement other strategies, such as setting boundaries or removing ourselves from the situation. Politely asking someone to stop being rude is about communicating our feelings and boundaries in a respectful and compassionate manner. It's about choosing our words wisely, speaking calmly, and listening with empathy. It's about responding to rudeness not with more rudeness, but with understanding and kindness. As the Buddha taught, in this world, hate never yet dispelled hate. Only love dispels hate. This is the law, ancient and inexhaustible. So, the next time you encounter rudeness, remember the principle of right speech. Pause, reflect, and choose your words wisely. Speak calmly and respectfully, listen with empathy, and express your feelings and boundaries without blaming or criticizing. By doing so, you can turn a potentially negative situation into an opportunity for understanding and growth. Lesson 3. Set boundaries. Setting boundaries is a profound act of self-compassion and wisdom. It is about understanding our limits, respecting ourselves, and protecting our peace. When dealing with rude people, it is essential to establish clear boundaries about what behavior we will and will not tolerate. This is not an act of aggression, but an assertive response rooted in the understanding of our worth and dignity. When we set boundaries, we are practicing ahimsa by protecting ourselves from harmful behavior and promoting a respectful and peaceful environment. Setting boundaries involves two things: understanding our limits and communicating them effectively. The first step in setting boundaries is understanding our limits. This requires self-awareness and mindfulness. We need to be aware of our emotional and mental states and recognize when someone's behavior is causing us distress. In Buddhism, this self-awareness is cultivated through mindfulness meditation, where we learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment. This practice helps us become more attuned to our inner world, making it easier to identify our limits. For instance, if someone's rude comments about our work are causing us stress, we need to acknowledge this as a limit. We are not obligated to endure such behavior in the name of patience or understanding. Instead, we can recognize it as a violation of our peace and dignity and take steps to address it. Once we understand our limits, the next step is to communicate them effectively. This involves expressing our boundaries clearly and assertively, without aggression or hostility. In Buddhism, this aligns with the principle of right speech, one of the eightfold paths to enlightenment. Right speech encourages us to communicate kindly, truthfully, and constructively. When setting boundaries, we can use right speech to express our limits in a respectful and assertive manner. For example, if someone is consistently rude to us, we can say something like, "I value our relationship and I believe in treating each other with respect. I feel uncomfortable when you speak to me in a disrespectful manner. I would appreciate it if you could communicate with me in a more respectful way." This statement is assertive, not aggressive. It expresses our limit clearly, explains why it's important, and requests a change in behavior. It's also respectful, as it acknowledges the other person's worth and expresses a desire for a harmonious relationship. Setting boundaries is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. We need to maintain our boundaries consistently and adjust them as necessary. This requires courage, patience, and persistence. For instance, if someone continues to be rude despite our request, we may need to remind them of our boundary, or consider other options like reducing our interaction with them or seeking support from others. As the Buddha taught, a disciplined mind brings happiness. By setting and maintaining boundaries, we are disciplining our mind to choose peace and respect over conflict and disrespect. Lesson 4. Remove yourself from the situation. In the Buddhist teachings, the concept of right action is one of the eightfold paths leading to enlightenment. It encourages us to act in ways that promote harmony, peace, and the alleviation of suffering. Sometimes, despite our best efforts to handle a situation with patience and compassion, we may find ourselves in an environment that is persistently hostile or harmful. In such cases, the wisest course of action may be to remove ourselves from the situation. Removing oneself from a situation does not equate to cowardice or defeat. Instead, it is a manifestation of wisdom and self-compassion. It is the understanding that our well-being and peace of mind are of paramount importance and should be safeguarded. The Buddha himself demonstrated this wisdom when he left his palace, abandoning a life of luxury and comfort to seek enlightenment and escape the cycle of suffering. When we choose to remove ourselves from a situation, we are making a conscious decision to prioritize our peace and mental health. This decision should not be made impulsively or out of anger, but rather with mindfulness and careful consideration. It is essential to reflect on the situation, understand its impact on our well-being, and then decide whether it is beneficial to stay or leave. The Buddha taught, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." This teaching emphasizes the importance of peace over conflict, understanding over ignorance, and wisdom over impulsiveness. When we remove ourselves from a situation, we are choosing peace over conflict, understanding that it's not a sign of weakness, but a testament to our strength and wisdom. Removing oneself from a situation can also be seen as an act of compassion towards the other person. By leaving, we are not only protecting ourselves, but also giving the other person an opportunity to reflect on their behavior. This alignment with the Buddhist principle of loving kindness, which encourages us to extend compassion and kindness to all beings, including those who may cause us harm. However, it's important to note that removing oneself from a situation is not always physically possible. In such cases, we can remove ourselves emotionally. This means not allowing the rudeness to affect our inner peace. We can achieve this by practicing mindfulness, focusing on our breath, and bringing our attention back to the present moment whenever it gets hijacked by negative emotions. In the Bhagavad Gita, a spiritual text that shares many teachings with Buddhism, it is said, "A person is considered still further advanced when he regards all, the honest well-wisher, friends and enemies, the envious, the pious, the sinner and those who are indifferent and impartial, with an equal mind." This teaching emphasizes the importance of equanimity, a state of mind that remains calm and composed regardless of the external circumstances. So, the next time you find yourself in a situation where rudeness persists despite your best efforts, remember this lesson. Choose peace, choose wisdom, and choose self-compassion. Lesson 5. Don't take it personally. When someone is rude, it's often a reflection of their inner turmoil, not a reflection of our worth or value. By understanding this, we can choose not to take their rudeness personally. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from our attachment to the self. When we cling to the idea of a separate self, we create a division between us and them, leading to feelings of resentment and anger when we perceive that we have been wronged. By focusing on our breath and observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment, we can begin to see the impermanent nature of ourself. We can see how our thoughts and emotions arise and pass away, like clouds in the sky. This can help us develop a sense of detachment from ourself and reduce our emotional reactivity to rudeness. In Buddhism, compassion is not just a feeling, but a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. When we see that the person being rude is also suffering, we can respond with kindness rather than anger. We can understand that their rudeness is a cry for help, a sign of their own confusion and pain. By responding with compassion, we can help alleviate their suffering and create a more harmonious environment. This teaches us that everything arises in dependence upon multiple causes and conditions. In the case of rudeness, it's important to understand that the person's behavior is not just about us, but is influenced by a complex web of factors, including their upbringing, past experiences, current state of mind, and even their physical health. By understanding this, we can see that their rudeness is not a personal attack, but a manifestation of their own suffering. When we understand that we are not a fixed self, but a constantly changing process, we can let go of our need to be right or in control. We can accept that we may not always understand why someone is being rude, and that it's okay. We can choose to respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness, seeking to understand rather than judge. By understanding that ourself is not a fixed entity, but a constantly changing process, we can let go of our attachment to the self and respond to rudeness with equanimity. By cultivating compassion and understanding the concept of dependent origination, we can respond with kindness rather than anger. And by cultivating humility, we can respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Overall, handling rude people through the lens of Buddhism is a journey of self-discovery, patience, and compassion. It's about choosing peace over conflict, understanding over ignorance, and compassion over anger. So, the next time you encounter rudeness, remember these lessons and let them guide you towards a more peaceful and harmonious existence.